Okay, so I'm going to do a talk on Rails and Elasticsearch. I think it's pretty cool to combo together. But the first question is, why should we add search? I can only think of two reasons. First is that we want our users to be able to find what they want very quickly. And second is that if you don't have a good search form, people will use Google to search your website, and most of the time they will never come back. So I think it's pretty important to roll out your own search solution. If anyone else has a good reason, let me know. We can talk about it at PTs.
Define stuff.
Define stuff? Yes, what do you mean by that?
That's a reason.
Okay.
You might. There's another reason.
Yeah.
Collect data on when your users are interested.
Okay, that's good. All right. But before you get started on implementing a search solution, no matter what ideas you come up with in order to implement it, you should really get to know your data. It'll help you define like what type of queries you expect people to run. This is pretty easily done in Rails by just spending some time in the Rails console, creating some records, seeing how they work with each other, etc. Okay, so integrating Elasticsearch is pretty easy. There is an official gem nowadays. It's not totally complete, but it's pretty much there. It's called Gem Elasticsearch Rails. You add it to your gem file. And what it does is we have Rails, we have our database, which in most cases is Postgres or MySQL. And Elasticsearch is a totally separate process. So you have an API that talks to it, but it's not part of your Rails app. It's something different. And if you check out the Ruby doc info, you'll see that there's a template application. I'll be using that to showcase how it works. The template application, if you go to the README, you'll see here towards the bottom, you just run these two commands and you have an Elasticsearch app. And this is what it looks like. We created a bunch of documents. I use figures to make sure the content is a little bit different. But now we can search. So let's say I want to search for everything with the word quasi. And voila, everything here has quasi. Notice that Elasticsearch by default will not care about case. But if I search for quasi, it's not going to do something like that. We'll get to how to fix that in a little bit. So if you look at the code, we'll see that Elasticsearch creates the Elasticsearch gem includes two modules that you include in your records. First is model, which gives us records like anything that's namespace with this Elasticsearch thing, and callbacks. The callbacks are cool, and this is how the callbacks work. So you have your Rails, your database, and your Elasticsearch. When we create a record, Rails will send something to the database. The database will be like, okay, I got something from Rails, I should save it. The database in return will send a message back to Rails saying, okay, I saved the record you asked me to save. Built-in Rails are these things called callbacks. Most notably, there's after save, after create, and after destroy. The Elasticsearch callbacks will hook into this, and we'll see every time the database says that we created or destroyed a record, it will automatically send that to Elasticsearch. You don't have to write any code. I think that's pretty cool. And then in turn, Elasticsearch will send a message back to Rails saying, okay, we've added this to the database. Very cool. So this is what you see at the model level. At the controller level, it's pretty simple. You just get search, calling a search method that you saw defined in the model, and records is something that's returned by Elasticsearch. We have the query parameter that we pass in, and the page is just some common line pagination. Okay. There we go. So if you notice that our queries were highlighted. This is annoying. If anyone knows a good solution to have Keynote doing presentation with, like it still use my other screens, please let me know. And so going back to the highlight is done by this code right here. Basically, we're saying for each of these matched terms that are matched in the document, we want to surround them with emphasis tags. So that allows them to be bold or highlighted or whatever HTML and CSS you want to define. Highlight also has titles and, fragments. Title and contents are just attributes on the article model. Fragments are basically stating how many of these bite-sized chunks do you want. If you notice back in the content, we have multiple chunks for where the quasi was matched. So highlight will take care of that. You can decide how big you want the chunks, how many chunks you want, etc. Okay. But I don't have very good typing skills. I make a bunch of typos. And you should expect your users to make a bunch of typos too. So what we need to do is we need to prepare for typos. And Elasticsearch has a pretty cool way to do that. So let's say I want to search for the word rabbit, but I accidentally spell it like rebot. Not very good. And I need to make 2 steps to correct this. I need to change the I with an A and the A to the I. Let's say I also add an extra B. I can do this all the time too. I would need to take 1 step to get rid of it. And as you can see, we have a typo with 1 misspelling and a typo with 2 misspellings. So let's take a look at what that code looks like. So here I have my different query. I'm using the fuzzy like this query. Fuzziness basically saying how many of these substitutions do I want to make. So right now I have fuzziness equals 1. Let's try that rabbit with 3 B's. Okay, I got my result that I wanted. But now if I try rebot, I don't get anything. So what I would need to do is I would need to adjust this fuzziness to 2. And then if I run this query, refresh the page, and it'll work. So that's how fuzziness works. You can play around with these settings. There's a ton of different queries you can throw out there. They're all pretty cool.
Is the number for the fuzziness just the number of steps that it takes to correct it?
Yeah. And it's called like the Levenstein algorithm. Definitely something that would take me years to understand. There is also something called the completion suggester, which basically says that if you have a really misspelled query, and you know how Google says, did you actually mean to search this? You can implement that too. Pretty cool. So next, let's talk about filters. Basically, we want to be able to filter our results. So let's take a look at what that code looks like. So I have a bunch of restaurants. And let's say I don't like myself and I want to eat McDonald's. And I'm like, I want a McDonald's place that's within 1 mile of innovation. Nothing. So that sucks. Maybe 2 miles. Maybe I could jog to McDonald's. Nope. How about anything within 3 miles? Okay, we have a few McDonald's. They're not too far away. I would probably drive. And I can eat my delicious McDonald's. And if I wanted to search in a larger range, Elasticsearch can do this pretty easily. I chose 100 miles because I want to make a shout out to Needles, Nevada, or California, which is the worst city in the world. Okay, so how does that work? Let's go back. Oops. So I use a filtered query. A filtered query basically takes a fuzzy query and it applies a filter to this. In this instance, I want to apply the geodistance filter. I use these things called geohashes. There's a gem called pure Ruby geohash that I use to generate these. You basically take the longitude and the latitude you get Google Maps and create this hash, which is kind of cool. And I had to add some settings to my documents. I had to have an attribute on my restaurant model called geohash, and I had to give it an attribute type of geopoint when I index it to Elasticsearch. Pretty cool stuff. And then that's not the whole story. As you saw, the results were sorted by how close they are to innovation. So what I would have to do is I had to sort the results, as you can see right here. I do ascending, so basically I want to find the closest McDonald's because I really want that big. Okay. So that's how you can filter results. It's all pretty much in the API, and I have to say that maybe besides Capybara, the Elasticsearch Rails gem has the best documentation. I really, really like it. So the next thing I want to talk about is tokens. When we were little, we changed our dollars for tokens and we were able to play. Growing up in Vegas, this was practice so we can learn how to exchange our money for gambling chips so we can play craps all day, or at least just me. So what tokens do is that when you have a document and you want to index it into something different, you apply a tokenizer to it, so there's a little bit of a difference. One is n-grams. So if I did an n-gram and I wanted to set n-grams to 1, Elephant would have all these various different strings in my Elasticsearch database. So you probably shouldn't know these things. I can use synonyms. So when I index the Elasticsearch documents, I can have one word mean another word. So I could have pirate to equal robot. And this is pretty cool if you want to have some Easter eggs on your website. If you could have crazy words that lead to different search results, may entertain our users for a little bit. I like the idea. But the one I want to showcase is called the Snowball. This is a default analyzer in Elasticsearch. It does a bunch of cool stuff, and let's see what it does. So what I did is I indexed all the words in the English language. I actually used code from David's anagram kata back in 2011. I think it was like one of my first review meetings where I didn't know what was going on. But let's say I used a snowball analyzer, and first I want to show you guys the query. The query is just the regular match query. So there's no fuzziness, there's no misspelling. I either match the word or I don't. But having indexed everything with the snowball analyzer, I created tokens out of these words and I'm able to generate different queries from my results. So let's say, for instance, I want to search the word apple. As you can see, the snowball analyzer was able to pluralize it, it was able to add the ing, it was able to take off the e and generate all these different tokens that I'm able to search. Similarly, if I wanted to search orange, there's a word called orangeator, which is pretty cool. An orangism, which may be like, I don't know, shaming oranges. But there's a bunch of cool stuff you can do with the snowball analyzer. So you're more than welcome to take a look. I put my code on GitHub, but I'll talk about it a little bit. But in general, you probably want to add the snowball analyzer because once again, it helps your user search data when they don't exactly know what they're searching for. And you want to make the user experience as nice as possible. So we can talk about production a little bit. Elasticsearch is one of these type of NoSQL databases where you write once and it'll take care of clustering across servers, nodes, etc. One thing that Dylan showed me was the Elasticsearch head, which is a separate process you can run to query your Elasticsearch cluster. It's a pretty nice GUI to see what indexes are up, are they healthy, can they take information, and you can have this pop over to actually run searches. So I find it to be a little easier to work with. Another thing that Elasticsearch has just released is this thing called Kavana. It's an AngularJS app where they've used to create graphical data. It doesn't really make sense unless you have hundreds of thousands and millions of documents. But if you do, this would be a pretty cool thing to use.
Is that free?
Yeah.
In the future, I think that while Rails and the Elasticsearch gem is great, eventually I'd like to get to this type of architecture where my client application talks directly with Elasticsearch and does the GET request, and Rails does all the put posts and deletes. Okay, so I'm not done quite yet. I went through it a lot faster than I wanted to. I wanted to give some links so you can check out. First is the Elasticsearch Rails gem. Like I said, amazing, amazing documentation. the Elasticsearch Rails gem is made up of two smaller gems, the Rails and the model Elasticsearch model gem. And I say it's great documentation because it really made good use of Yard. You can see it all here. If you're interested in my McDonald's data set, I don't know why, but you could look at the POI factory. I was looking for good data sets, and they seem to have a bunch of other good ones. Shout out to the PR geohash gem, which allowed me to take longitude and latitude and turn them into geohashes. If you need any help deciding what query you should use, that documentation is actually on elasticsearch.org. So if you notice in my search methods, these are basically just hashes. You would generate these hashes based off what you saw here. It took me a while to realize that. And here are some cloud hosting providers if you're interested in having someone else managing the clustering and indexing, because that's pretty tough. Qbox, which is what we use, Searchly, Found, and Bonsai, which actually scrapes your website, so you don't even have to do anything. You just pay them money and you have a search engine. Okay. I breezed through that a lot faster than I wanted to, so any questions? Yeah?
You said you use PR geohash? What was that for?
It's for taking the longitude and latitude and creating these hashes. The reason I chose to do that is because, to the best of my knowledge, only like Postgres and like MongoDB support arrays in their database. So I just wanted one string to represent the location.
Oh, for persistence, not Elasticsearch.
Yeah, it's not really that important.
Okay, I was just
Not
curious.
Elasticsearch. Yeah.
You might have said it right in the beginning, pardon me, but this isn't using anything from Amazon Web Services, is it?
No. But a lot of those providers that I just showed use AWS to distribute Elasticsearch.
And is this like something separate you'd run and you'd,
Oh, yeah, I should've
tell it
said
to
that.
index your actual database?
So the way it does the indexing is through these active record callbacks. But I had to install and boot up the Elasticsearch process. If you have a Mac and Homebrew, it's just as simple as brew install Elasticsearch.
So what about like migrating your database and things like that? How does Elasticsearch stay on top of that?
It's pretty tough because if you have a migration where you're like renaming a bunch of columns, the best practice is just to re-index with a fresh index. Sorry, re-upsert your documents with a fresh index, and then create an alias to point from the old index to the new index. There's a really good blog post that describes that. Yeah, go.
Yeah, so just to back up a little bit, can you clarify, is Elasticsearch basically just a gem that somebody wrote? Or is it a service? Is it
It's separate
something
service
that...
process?
Hmm?
Process.
It's a Java. It's a Java. It's a
Who-
Java.
And how do you go about, do you install a set of servers yourself that run this NoSQL database? Or are you assuming that you're using some service provider in the cloud who's offering that to you? I don't
You can do
understand.
either or.
What?
You can do either or. This is basically just like talking to any other database. This one's on a port, and you send in messages. The Elasticsearch Rails gem allows you to send those messages pretty easily within Rails.
Right, well, what is the database that's
Elasticsearch.
Yeah.
That's the name of the database?
Yes.
Is it implemented?
I think Elasticsearch takes your database and indexes it
Yeah.
and does a more performant, smarter search than your database can do.
Yeah, and so it's a custom-built Java application that you run, and
Right.
it boots itself up, and then you can boot up multiple instances of that, and they all talk to each other on ports, and then you send your information via port to it. It just consumes it.
Right, where is the actual, is the data
Yeah, it grows.
stored inside your database?
No,
Or is it
it's stored
somewhere else?
in the process.
Both places.
Yeah. I
You,
should
you
have
store the
better
data in your database, and then Elasticsearch, you have to give it what you want indexed.
Yeah.
And all it is it's an indexing engine using a
Do you have it-
NoSQL
Yeah.
key
Do you
value
wanna-
store where it basically
Okay,
looks apart
who's
your
NoSQL key
It's how the
value
head
store?
grows.
Is it
and it
on its
runs
own?
out, it grows.
Oh, it has its
Elasticsearch.
own, okay.
You want to show like the log?
It's
Or?
that-
Well, just
what
show
it
them the
is.
head. Elasticsearch
It
head.
is
Just show them
using
how big it is. and then-
NoSQL
Oh,
database.
I don't have that installed on this computer.
You don't-
sorry.
oh.
If you could find the files and do ls-l and show them that there's some data.
Yeah, so like it grows to a certain size, and then
Uh-huh.
it writes all the stuff to a file
Okay.
internally to the Elasticsearch, and then it grows again and just based on some configuration options, you can tell it to keep it all in memory or to write out, and then
But it basically just rips apart all the text that
Yeah.
you throw at it and turns it into keys into the various records.
and it usually takes a lot of memory unless you tell it not to.
And do you normally run it on a separate
You normally
machine,
just pay a
separate
service
server?
to do it for you.
Well,
Yeah.
see, this is the kind of question I'm asking about
Well, that's what
the
Alice does for
deployment.
everything,
It's either or, Jan. It's like, yes, you can you can run it locally, and you can set it to consume little memory, but
Right.
then you don't get as much performance out of it. So, but the best use is to have your own server that you dedicate it to.
Okay.
And the code for upstarting is just this line right here. Include this module, does everything. Like the gem is pretty cool.
I can say one detail that I think helped me understand what it was doing. You can choose not to store a copy of the actual pages that you're indexing in the Elasticsearch database. I think it's actually by default. If you just index everything into Elasticsearch, it will only store indexes, basically. It will not have a way of recreating the actual text that was inserted. So it's got some very fancy database that does this indexing. If you want to be able to do this highlighting that Nick was showing, you have to tell it, hey, I actually want you to store a copy of the thing before you cut it up into pieces and index it. So it's a very different kind of database from MySQL or Postgres.
And I guess another thing is the way you're interacting with Elasticsearch, it's just a REST API. So it's basically, it's almost running like a little web server that just takes put and post requests.
Oh, I'm skeptical you had to call this method that has underscores at the beginning.
It's how he chose to namespace. I don't agree with that style, but
Yeah.
whatever.
So it can be
I'm not
into-
gonna write PRs to his gem.
Is there some kind of
time for that?
Is there some kind of global variable or something?
And
What is
then
that?
initializer just
That's
say
just a method that has underscores.
search equals Elasticsearch with underscores. And then you just use it.
He didn't want his name to collide with anything else.
Yeah.
Yeah, which I appreciate, but it's always ugly.
Use a hash.
Yeah.
Have you tried Tire?
This guy wrote Tire, retired it, and then wrote this gem. So
Okay.
Tire's old.
This is the successor.
yeah.
Tire's really old.
Cool. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.